Hi LCS students, it's Mrs. Peterson here. Today we're going to be making artwork like Juan Miró. We're going to start off by writing our name and our room number on the back of our paper, right in the middle. I'm holding my paper horizontally, which means it's going side to side, but you could also hold your paper vertically for this project. So once I flip over my paper, I'm going to start making my monsters similar to how Juan Miró made little creatures in his artwork. I'm going to be using 3 geometric shapes and I'm going to be using 3 organic shapes. So I'm going to start with my geometric shapes. Remember, geometric shapes are the shapes that have names, the ones that you learn about in math class, so you already know these shapes. So maybe I'll do a semicircle, which is half of a circle. Maybe I'll do a heart. And maybe for my last shape, I'll do a rectangle. So I'm drawing these nice and big, and I'm trying to fill up a lot of my paper. Then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to add my organic shapes. Remember, organic shapes are irregular and they don't have a formal name, so you're inventing or imagining these shapes up. There's one organic shape, another organic shape, and then one more. So now I have 3 geometric shapes and I have 3 organic shapes. Now I'm going to start to turn these shapes into monsters. So you can add details like a mouth, a nose, ears, eyes, but you could also add hair or fins or flippers or wings. It's totally up to you how you imagine these creatures. So I'm just gonna start here with this organic shape in the middle, and I'm gonna start to think of my first creature. So maybe a little eyeball goes here. Maybe it has a little nose. These almost look like wings to me, so I'm just gonna put some lines on my wings. And maybe I wanna make some feet. Some little feet like it would be a bird. I can even add some teeth. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to go in to each shape and I'm going to turn each shape in a monster, and then we'll move on to the next step. So these are the monsters that I thought of. Remember, I don't want your monsters to look like mine. Be creative and think of your own geometric and organic shapes and think of your own monster details. Now once I have everything drawn with pencil, I'm going to go back with a black Sharpie marker, or you could just use a black marker and trace all of my lines with the Sharpie. So I'm just going to keep working on tracing and I'll see you back here in a little bit. So now I have all of my monsters traced with Sharpie marker and I'm ready for the next step. Now the next step that we are doing is optional, which means you don't have to complete this step. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be painting the background. The background is the area behind our monsters with watercolor paint. So I'm going to need my watercolor paints. This is the set that I have at my house. And I'm also going to need a cup of water, and I'm going to need a paintbrush. I just grabbed 2, a bigger one and a small one. Now, with my watercolor, I'm only going to use 1, maybe 2 colors for my background because my monsters are going to end up being very colorful. So when I use my watercolor paint, let me just move this over here. I'm going to make sure I'm using lots of water. So I'm going to give my paintbrush a bath in the water, and then I'm going to pick my color. What color do I want? I think I'm going to do green. And then I'm going to put my paintbrush in the paint, and then I'm just going to start to paint my monsters background, not the monsters themselves. If you get a little bit of paint on the monsters, that's okay because we can always go back in. So I'm starting with the green, but you can actually pick 2 colors and mix them together if you'd like for your background. So I think I'll do the green, and then I'll also do some yellow. And every time I'm changing colors, I'm giving my paintbrush a bath because I don't want to turn the yellow paint a different color from not giving my paintbrush a bath. I can mix the colors on my paper, but I cannot mix the colors on the paint itself. So I'm just going to continue going in and painting my entire background. I'm going to use lots of water and make sure I'm giving my paintbrush a bath every single time I change colors. I'm finishing the last little bit of painting with my watercolor paint, and then I'm going to give my paintbrush a bath and put it to the side so it can dry for a little bit. I'm also going to let my painting dry just for a couple of minutes. Watercolor paint dries pretty quickly before I start to color with regular markers. My paint is pretty much dry, so now is the perfect time to start to color my monsters. I'm going to be coloring my monsters with marker, but you may use crayon or colored pencil based on what you have available to you. Remember, when you color, do your best craftsmanship, which means you're coloring nice and neat and staying inside of the lines. When I color my monsters, I'm just going to do my very best coloring, and I'm going to try to make each monster a different color. So I'm just going to continue coloring, and I'll check back with you when I'm all finished. I'm just finishing up the last little bit of my project, and then I'll be all finished. So now I'm all finished with my Miró monster art project. I drew geometric and organic shapes, and I turned them into monsters. I can't wait to see all the creative and unique monsters that you make. See you soon.